In my last video, I went into why Beechcraft decided to stop the production of the King Air C90. If you haven't seen it, be sure to check it out. But unfortunately, the King Air C90 isn't the only airplane that's coming to an end. Recently, Bombardier announced that they're stopping production of the LearJet 75 later this year. Now, the LearJet has a very colorful history not only in general aviation, but also with the public and in pop culture. And although there were other small jets during the start of the LearJet, it really became known as the first private jet. So in this video, we're going to go over the LearJet's very rough start, its model history and success, and why it's finally coming to an end. So without further ado, let's get right into it. The LearJet comes from one of the greatest American inventors, William Powell Lear. Bill Lear had only completed the 8th grade, but he had a passion for engineering and he was self-taught. In his life, he had over 120 patents, which included the 8-track cartridge, which revolutionized the music industry. He also loved aviation, and back in the early 1960s, the world was being introduced to jet travel with the success of the Boeing 707. Bill Lear had a vision for personal jet travel, and his inspiration for the private jet came from a Swiss prototype fighter, the FFA P-16. The P-16 never went into production, but Bill had the opportunity to review it in detail, and from this came the first Learjet, the Model 23. The Model 23 first flew in 1963, and it became the pinnacle of private aviation for the time. It was luxurious and fast, with a top speed of 545 miles per hour while carrying 4 passengers and 2 pilots. It set many records, and it could actually outclimb an F-100 Super Sabre up to 10,000 feet. But the majority of pilots weren't really ready for such a hot airplane. Because it was based off a fighter jet, of course it also flew like one. It had a high roll rate and added complexity that wasn't really common in other aircraft at the time. And within 3 years, there were 23 crashes. And then if you fast forward to 2005, over half of the 101 Model 23s crashed. That means 1 out of 8 Learjet Model 23s killed someone. It might be the most dangerous general aviation airplane of all time, statistically. The Lear 23 was produced up to 1966 and was then replaced by the Model 24. The Lear 24 was pretty similar to the previous version, but it had an extra window, more powerful engines, and a higher takeoff weight. Then the Model 25 had its first flight in 1966, and it featured a longer fuselage and redesigned smaller windows for added pressurization. The Model 24 was produced up until 1977, and the 25 was made until 1982. Now, some of these models do overlap in the timeline, so I might jump around a few years, but I'll try to keep it chronological. In 1969, the Gates Rubber Company merged with Learjet, turning the company into the Gates Learjet Company. In 1973, the Lear 35 first flew, and it had an even longer fuselage for 8 passengers, and it was also the largest model produced with those awesome tip tanks. Man, I love those. In 1977, the Gates Learjet Company came out with the Lear Model 28, which was the first Learjet to have a completely redesigned wing, which replaced the wingtip tanks with winglets. Only 9 of these were produced up until 1982. In 1981, the Lear Model 55 came out with a larger fuselage for 10 people, and also winglets designed by NASA. The Model 55 is very comparable to the Model 35, except it has a taller cabin, making it more comfortable for the passengers. It was also a little faster with a normal cruise speed of 445 miles per hour compared to 436 of the Model 35. Then fast forward to 1990, Bombardier acquired Learjet and introduced the Model 60, which had a good increase in top speed at 536 miles per hour. Now this one was very popular and 400 were built. Between 1995 and 2013, there was the Model 45 and 40, which were the smaller of the modern Learjets. Then fast forward up to very recently, Bombardier ended all the models except the new Lear Model 75. By 2019, 149 were produced. Then in early 2021, Bombardier announced that it was coming to an end. The Learjet had made a huge impact in private aviation, and the public mostly ditched their interest in propeller-driven airplanes. The Learjet has been cited in many song lyrics and became a common symbol of wealth in movies and music videos. Rappers like Lil Wayne Wayne, Busta Rhymes, Big Sean, and Notorious B.I.G. all rap about flying around in a Learjet. And then of course there was Carly Simon's song You're So Vain, where she sings about a man flying his Lear up to Canada to watch a solar eclipse. Now let's go over some Learjet fun facts. In 1966, a Lear Model 24 flew around the world in 50 hours and 20 minutes. In 1972, the Learjet became the first business jet approved for gravel runway operations. The Learjet 23 and 24 are pretty aerobatic, and they have performed at air shows. James Brown, John Travolta, and Frank Sinatra all had Learjets, and the Learjet is used in the military and known as the C-21 and U-36. And it does look pretty cool in military style. The Learjet pretty much became a generic term for private jet, kind of like using the words Xerox, Kleenex, chapstick, or Band-Aid. Of course, there were a lot of other examples of private jets like the Cessna Citations, Dassault Falcons, and the modern Embraer Phantoms, Honda Jet, and Pilatus PC-24. Even Bombardier has other jets like the Global and Challenger line. With so many options in the market, the Learjet started to become a little dated and it started showing in sales. In 2020, Bombardier only sold 5 Learjets compared to 23 Challengers and 18 Globals. In that same year, Pilatus sold 16 PC-24s, Honda sold 9 Honda Jets, and Cirrus sold 31 Visions. Oh yeah, and Gulfstream sold 46. So if you want to contribute to my Gulfstream fund, the GoFundMe is linked below. Just kidding. So where do the early Model 23 and 24 stand today? Well, half of the Model 23s crashed, and also in 2015, the FAA prohibited flying the 23 and 24 unless they had hush kits installed. These kits make the jet much quieter, but also required a huge investment to keep them flying. So obviously many were grounded forever. And basically the FAA took away the early model Learjet's freedom of speech. The later Learjet models will remain flying around for decades, and I believe the Learjet will be a household name for a lifetime. So if you can right now, go on Bombardier's website, check out their listing of the Learjet Model 75, because by the end of 2021, it will be no more. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to like and subscribe, and until then, blue skies, and I'll see you in the next video.